U.S. law enforcement officials have arrested two New York residents for allegedly operating a secret Chinese police station in Manhattan's Chinatown. The two people arrested face charges of conspiring to act as agents of China's government without informing U.S. authorities and also obstruction of justice. They were later released on bond following an initial appearance in a Brooklyn federal court. According to the prosecutors, one of the accused was asked by China's government to locate an individual living in California who was considered a pro-democracy activist. A Kansas City man charged with 2 felonies in the shooting of a black teenager who walked up to the wrong house while going to pick up his younger twin siblings. The shooter has been charged with first-degree assault and armed criminal action for shooting Raphael, a 16-year-old, on the doorstep of his suburban home. The county prosecutor said that there was a racial component on the case and the shooter was taken into custody, placed on a 24-hour investigative hold and then released pending the collection of forensic evidence. Police have stated that they will be conducting an internal investigation into the shooting of Jalen Walker following the decision by an Ohio grand jury not to indict the police officers involved in the unarmed black man's death. 8 Akron police officers shot Walker 46 times, including 5 times in the back last June. According to the police, they shot Walker after a 7-minute chase when they pulled him over for a traffic violation and claimed that Walker pulled a gun on them and shot at them first when they were using non-lethal tasers to subdue him. An autopsy found that Walker had no drugs or alcohol in his system. The Pentagon has said that it expected findings within 45 days from a review into how the U.S. military handles classified information. This comes after last week's arrest of an airman over the leak of highly classified documents online. Pentagon spokesperson said that the Pentagon is taking this breach very seriously and continues to work around the clock to better understand the scope and scale of these leaks, adding that the Pentagon review was being led by the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. Hollywood writers voted overwhelmingly in favor of giving union negotiators the power to call a strike. This may lead to a production shutdown, which would hamper studios and disrupt what viewers see on television. The Writers Guild of America said 97.85% of the members who voted supported letting negotiators order a work stoppage if they do not have a new contract by the 1st of May. Writers say they have suffered during the streaming TV boom, in part due to shorter seasons and smaller residuals. They are seeking pay increases from Netflix, Walt Disney and other studios. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has said that the state legislature will file a bill to revoke an agreement the Walt Disney Company reached to circumvent state oversight of its parks. Disney employs some 75,000 people in the state. Current Disney CEO Bob Iger called the move a retaliation, anti-business and anti-Florida. Critics say that the Florida governor began targeting Disney a year ago after the company's then chief executive spoke out against a bill limiting discussion of sexuality and gender identity in Florida elementary school classrooms. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and his British counterpart Ben Wallace met at the Pentagon and discussed the plan to provide Australia with nuclear-powered attack submarines and support to Ukraine's military. During remarks before their meeting at the Pentagon, Austin said that the AUKUS alliance showed the country's commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. Australia, United States and Britain's plan to provide nuclear-powered attack submarines is expected to come into force by the early 2030s to counter China's ambitions in the Indo-Pacific. The United States, along with 40 other countries in a joint statement, have said that they are deeply concerned over Russia's detainment of the U.S. Wall Street Journal reporter and urged for his release. They also called out Moscow's efforts to limit and intimidate the media. This statement was read at the United Nations on Monday by U.S. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield. The Wall Street Journal reporter was arrested for collecting state secrets by Russia's FSB security service. In response, the Russian ambassador to the United Nations said that his guilt is for the courts and Russian agencies to deal with. Former world leaders gathered on the 17th of April to remember the peace negotiations for the Good Friday Agreement 25 years after the deal ended violence in Northern Ireland. Former U.S. State Secretary Hillary Clinton hosted a debate in Belfast between former U.S. President Bill Clinton, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and former Irish Prime Minister Bertie Ahern. Now, Blair said that Northern Ireland became a better place after the agreement but acknowledged that peace wasn't perfect. Bill Clinton praised human contact throughout the negotiations and wished that it was applied in other troubled areas as well. French President Emmanuel Macron, while asking his government to open talks with unions on a range of issues, gave himself 100 days to heal the country after weeks of protests. In a televised speech 2 days after signing into law plans to increase the retirement age by 2 years to 64, Macron said that he wanted his prime minister to propose measures on working conditions, law and order, education and health issues. He said that he will take stock on the 14th of July, referring to Bastille Day, France's national day, often a milestone in French politics. Protesters gathered in central Paris to make noise while French President Emmanuel Macron was delivering a speech on national television. Hundreds of protesters chanted anti-Macron slogans while banging on pots and pans. Macron delivered the speech to the nation 2 days after signing into law plans to increase the retirement age, as I mentioned earlier. The protest lasted less than an hour, with some protesters torching bins as they walked away. Top diplomats from the Group of Seven held a second day of talks on Tuesday in the Japanese resort town of Kurosawa. Now, Russia's war in Ukraine consumed much of the agenda on Monday for the envoys. The talks are meant to pave the way for action by G7 leaders when they meet next month in the Japanese city of Hiroshima, and hosted by the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Polish forces conducted a counter-offensive exercise simulating a takeover of the strategic Vistula Split Canal. Air, ground and sea forces teamed to train on a strategy to liberate the canal and surrounding bridges located a few miles from Russia's enclave of Kaliningrad. U.S. Army personnel and vehicles also took part in the exercise. Inaugurated in 2022, the canal located in Skaronki allows ships to cross the Nance Bay and reach the Baltic Sea, avoiding Russian waters. Kiev aims to reopen food and grain transit via Poland as a first step to ending import bans at talks that began in Warsaw on the 17th of April. Poland says that Ukraine needs help, but the cost of help should be spread over all European countries. This comes after Poland and Hungary announced bans on some imports from Ukraine on the 15th of April. Slovakia said on Monday that it would do the same, and other countries in Central and Eastern Europe said that they were also considering action. This is due to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, of course, blocking some Black Sea ports and trapping large quantities of Ukrainian grain in the European Union countries. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia would be a giant leap towards ending the Arab-Israeli conflict. Israel has opened diplomatic ties with several Arab countries since 2020, including Saudi Arabia's neighbors, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. But Riyadh has held back from recognizing Israel, saying that such moves should be tied to resolving the Palestinian statehood goals. A huge setback for Netanyahu's efforts came last month when a China brokered deal saw Israel's major regional foe, Iran, mend its ties with Saudi Arabia. As violence in Sudan continues, artillery rounds being fired in East Khartoum late into the night could be heard. Violence between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces has killed at least 200 people and injured more than 1,800. Their deadly power struggle has derailed a shift to civilian rule and has raised fears of a wider conflict. The European Union's ambassador to Sudan was assaulted at his residence on the 17th of April. After the incident, the EU Foreign Policy Chief tweeted that this constitutes as a gross violation of the Vienna Convention, adding that security of diplomatic premises and staff is a primary responsibility of Sudanese authorities and an obligation under law, international law. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned the outbreak of fighting in Sudan and appealed to the leaders of the Sudanese armed forces as well as the RSF to immediately cease hostilities. He urged all those with influence over the situation to use it in cause of peace, to support efforts to end the violence, restore order and return to the path of transition. He also called the humanitarian situation in Sudan catastrophic. The Egyptian president has said that Egyptian troops held in Sudan were merely there to conduct exercises with their Sudanese counterparts and not to support any of the warring parties. After clashes erupted across Sudan between the paramilitary and the RSF shared a video, they said, that showed Egyptian troops who had surrendered to them. The video showed a number of men dressed in army fatigues crouched on the ground and speaking to members of the RSF.
صف صف نعم هاي طيب يلا الحاجة دي أسلحة ثقيلة يعني جدد
60 migrants who were rescued from two boats in central Mediterranean landed in Malta, making it the biggest arrival of migrants on the island for months. The migrants were picked up by a merchant ship between Malta and Libya, following instructions by Malta's rescue authorities. The rescue came days after Malta was criticized by a senior Italian politician as well as charities such as Alarm Phone and Sea Watch for failing to rescue boat people in its search and rescue zone. Maltese authorities deny the existence of any plan to systematically ignore rescue calls. As per the World Trade Organization, India violated trade rules by imposing huge import duties on IT products. The World Trade Organization was hearing a matter on India imposing a 10% custom duty on mobile phones and some other IT products in 2017. Later, New Delhi raised the duty from 10 to 20%, which upset countries like the European Union, the United States, China, Singapore, Taiwan and Japan, all of whom are major tech hubs. These countries argue that such a levy badly affected their business. But India has argued that the 2017 move was done to curb imports and encourage domestic production. New Delhi has defended itself, adding that the IT products were not part of the 1996 Agreement on Information Technology. A scientific expedition has discovered a previously unknown coral reef with abundant marine life off Ecuador's Galapagos Islands. The Ecuadorian Environment Minister said that a deep-water scientific expedition has found the first totally pristine coral reef, approximately 2 kilometers long at 400 meters deep on the summit of a submarine mountain. The coral is several thousand years old at least. The Galapagos, which inspired Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, are also home to giant tortoises, albatross, and other species.
Humid things, but then they're trying to get water.
Moisture, yeah.
So like these were still a problem after that.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.